But lots going on news and politics-wise, and nothing more in the news right now than what is happening with the Pawtucket Red Sox proposal. And we have around the corner Senator James Sheehan, who had penned a piece. Thank you for coming in, Senator.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. We're talking right to the folks about the piece you wrote this week saying, in its current form, you would vote against the Paw Sox deal.
Yes.
When did you come to this conclusion and decide, I want to let folks know, I want to let my constituents know this is how I feel?
Well, first, it would have been easier, given the previous incarnation of this proposal, to have prejudice, because they wanted us to basically pay $120 million or so up front for the Providence proposal for the ballpark. But I wanted to be fair, so I did all the due diligence on it. People have been asking me, and so I said, well, I got to do a deep dive on this. Went to a hearing, read all the information they gave me, the legislation scrutinized it, talked to different people, and I really came to the conclusion just prior to sending out that letter that in its present form, it wasn't a good deal for the people of Rhode Island.
Well, here we are. It's November 8th. We're here in the studio. We're kind of at an impasse here. The last we've seen from Finance Chair Senator Conley is that wanted some additional financial information from the ownership group, individually of this collective ownership group. Is that where we're at? I mean, when are we going to see a next step?
Well, I think if I read it correctly, even on your breaking news here on this very channel, we had the Speaker of the House saying that it might not, it's unlikely perhaps that it would go for a vote this year. So I think that would punt the plan back, and of course it's an election year next year, that could complicate things even further. So I think where we stand right now, it's kind of in a holding pattern around the airport, so to speak, and put a pitch in for Green Airport.
We do have the airport. Gonna be a little closer over here, Senator.
Sure.
Okay.
But I think it's pending right now, and that the Senate has more interest in it right now than the House does. The Speaker seems uncommitted. I think that even delays it a little bit further.
Have you had conversations with the Senate President about this?
Not directly. He did. He was interested in my putting out a letter, but aside from a small conversation with him, no, it's been mostly committee focused because he's given the task to the committee.
And talk with us since you put this letter out and let folks know your position on this. You know, we've heard from a number of elected officials their stance. What has the response been to the letter that you put out this week?
I think it's been pretty positive. My constituents feel that they had gotten burned, of course, in 38 studios, and I think that was the case for sure, and not ready to be to put the state in a position to be a private investor, like in a private corporation. I think that sets them on end, and I can understand that. I mean, the state, I think, and I've done a lot of research on 38 studios, was really ill-equipped to make that kind of financial analysis. It may be the case here too, although I think the deals, there are differences, but still there is risk involved.
Do you think, you know, you mentioned 38 studios, and we always talk about the 38 studios hangover, but there have been so many hearings this fall on this. There's been almost a myopic focus on it. Do you think that the House and the Senate have done their due diligence and that the public knows? I mean, you're armed with the information. You said, I have it, here it is. Do you think they did their homework?
I think they've done a lot of homework, a lot of good due diligence. I was very happy to see them do hearings around the state to get information out. But that still doesn't mean that the information they got proves that this is actually a good deal for the people of Rhode Island, which I've concluded based on the present legislation that it's not.
And so when we talked, we had the Speaker in here talking with CEO Josh Fenton on Monday, talking again his hesitancy to make a move this year on this, as you mentioned, more support on the Senate side. You know, looking into 2018, potential to see an altered version, potential to see it to go to voters. Do you think that that would be something you would support if that in this current iteration to say to the voters, look, we're not going to just leave this up to a vote of the Assembly. We want to hear from you on a ballot item.
I would be definitely something I would support, a referendum both in Pawtucket and statewide.
Yes.
As opposed to resort to moral obligation bonds, which kind of is almost an end run around the voters getting involved in taking on new debt. That wouldn't be all I would ask for. I think the current deal needs to be reworked some, maybe even more than some, but the referendum definitely. I think if we're going to put the tax base ultimately on the hook, because this deal, like 38, would be too big to fail. You can't allow a redevelopment agency in Pawtucket to go under. You can't allow a state agency to do that. So ultimately, the taxpayers are on the hook. So they need a say in this.
And have you heard from folks when you put this letter out, again, opposing the current deal, that want to reach out to you and say, hey, we support the current deal? Have you heard from the supporters after?
I've had a couple people, two constituents. One wrote me a letter, maybe actually three altogether, 2 letters and 1 email. But that's kind of pales in comparison to all the people that really are opposed and upset about government getting involved with this kind of investment.
So we really don't expect anything. I mean, again, as you said, we would have to hear from the Senate on this. We're
Yep.
waiting for some additional information. So we're looking into 2018. Gosh, it's usually the fall that you guys have
I know.
off,
Yeah,
and
well,
now you're back.
It's becoming more and more of a full-time legislature all year round.
It is looking at all year round. So looking into 18, getting through the holidays and into the new year, apart from the POSOX, what will
Yep.
be on your agenda for getting back to the State House in 18?
I may be looking at some legislation about magistrates. There's something that Common Cause has worked on and worked on in the past with them. We have people called magistrates, and they're virtually judges. They walk like a duck, quack like a duck, they're a duck. But yet they're actually nominated by the judiciary and then confirmed by the Senate. I think that's too much of inside baseball to go back to that topic, and that should be something that those folks should be vetted through the Judicial Nominating Commission. That's one piece of legislation I'm looking at right now.
We have seen a lot from Common Cause on that
Yes.
issue. Do you think it's something that has gained traction in the public for their interest? I mean, a lot of folks in that legal community are clearly interested in it. Do you think it resonates with the state as a whole?
I think if you can explain it to people that they may end up in front of a magistrate and you want to make sure you have the highest qualified candidate that stands in judgment of them, that separation of powers, I think, adds more to the process than just someone that is handpicked by the judiciary and confirmed by the Senate. And of course, some would argue that the Senate and the judiciary enjoy a very special relationship, so I think that even muddies the water further.
Okay, that's one piece. What else are we looking at 18?
I am not prepared to give a full disclosure of what I want to do because it kind of steps on my press release lines. But but that is one that I am seriously looking at. There are others that I'm looking into, but I'm not prepared to give a statement yet on those.
And we've seen more today about the state putting forth their proposal for Amazon.
Right. And by the way, if I could,
Yes.
I worked on the ethics reform stuff. And I've put a lot of time in that. That's finally kind of in the bag, so that took up a lot of my time.
That did take up a lot of your time.
Yeah, there is something that's very topical. I think that you'd be interested later on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I like to get little hints of what's to come down the
a little
pipeline.
Teaser, a little teaser.
Speaking of teasers, one of the things that's in the cycle today is the state's play to have Amazon come here.
Yeah.
Do you think the state's in the position to be able to lure such a large company for 50,000 jobs?
Well, it's difficult. When I was very young, I did an internship for then the Rhode Island Economic Development, Department of Economic Development. And it's really hard when one state bids against another. It really goes down to the state that has deeper pockets. And I don't really think we have enough really to offer them for them to come to Rhode Island. Unfortunately, I would certainly love to see them come.
And 18, of course, election year.
Yeah. Oh, fun.
Yes. We've had some candidates in here. We've had both Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee and his challenger, Aaron Ruggenberg, looking obviously at the gubernatorial race, mayoral race here in Providence as well. What do you think are going to be the major factors, especially in the gubernatorial race, as challengers are taking on Governor Raimondo?
I mean, the UHIP issue, I think, is going to be one big liability for the governor, as well as the general economic state of the economy. That's something I think that most people vote their pocketbooks, and if the economy looks like it's going well and people feel like they have some optimism, I think the governor may retain her seat. Of course, money is always a big factor, and she is a juggernaut in terms of how much money she has in her bank account, so that's another one too.
I think one of the things that we've talked with folks when they've come in that we're going to be looking at as we release those benchmark poll results with John Della Volpe from Harvard. Again, folks not feeling really confident about the state of where the state is headed. Why is it UHIP? Is it a combination of factors? Apart, and the pocketbook issues were a separate one itself. Are you better off today?
Right.
3 years later under the new administration, most people said the same and worse were bigger than doing better. But I mean, why do you think folks thinks that the state is on the wrong track?
I think a lot of the things that we need to restructure in our state take a long time. And when people are in dire straits now, in the here and now, it's a lot harder for them to be patient, to wait until prosperity comes around the corner. So there's so many factors that economically that we're weak in that we need to improve on, that it does take time. I think the governor, in fairness to her, has done some of those things, taken some right steps, like with education, for example, making it more affordable for people to be retrained, to get back in the economy. But it takes longer for people to realize and that to filter down to folks. In Rhode Island, we lost a lot of our manufacturing base. We need to rebuild in terms of new manufacturing for the future.
Well, we're going to continue to keep an eye on these polling numbers moving forward because, again, that was the benchmark to see where the needle moves moving forward. You saw the numbers for the Paw Sox and the numbers who were opposed. Did that surprise you?
No. No, it didn't. I mean, again, it is a bit of a hangover from 38, but then again, there's some similar dynamics at play. I mean, is the state equipped to make this kind of financial analysis? Should the people of Rhode Island have a say in that? I would say no to the first and certainly yes in the second, but there's other factors too, where you look at just class is an example. You have a group of well-to-do owners of the team who, for whatever reason, haven't gone to a bank and asked them for a simple loan to build a new stadium, which they could afford to pay back. They're asking the taxpayers of Rhode Island to put out the public, to put out $38 million. I believe in tax incentives to a degree. I helped author some legislation that gave tax incentives to companies that produce a certain amount of good-paying jobs.
Yep.
That to me is A equals B. Here, if they build it and they will come, we don't know. And the best analysis and research out there says that these types of stadia are not catalysts for development. Oftentimes, tax-wise, they might break even or not break even. And we're talking about money that's discretionary income that people either spend at the Paw Sox Stadium or they'll go to PPAC down the street and go to the movies or go out to dinner or something like that. So it's not really adding a net value to the community per se, other than there are certainly sports fans and you want to take your son or daughter out to the game. That's nice, but why does the taxpayer of Rhode Island have to pay for that?
You pretty much kicked off your letter with that, saying, I love the Paw Sox, they're a great Rhode Island institution.
It's great.
It's not being anti-Paw Sox, it's looking at the deal as it currently stands.
Right, and the deal could be a lot better, and when the owners compare it to other ballparks, well, that's like saying, well, the other park deals are really, really bad, and this one's just not too bad. That's not good enough for the people of Rhode Island. I think they expect more for the elected officials to get them the best deal possible or walk away.
So before we let you go and walk away, there's lots going on downtown. You can join the parade going by.
All right.
We had Chris Maxwell in yesterday with the Rhode Island Trucking Association. There have been some developments. They're pushing off the implementation of the first 2 tolls. There's some community input opportunities later on this month. So they're rolling it out. I mean, this thing is on the roads, rolling it out. What have you heard from your constituents on it, and how do you see this as fitting into the general economic structure of the state?
Well, I mean, I would even dovetail into the last little conversation we had, that if we have to actually put tolls up, gantries up, to pay for rebuilding our infrastructure, do we really have money to give to a ballpark, an entertainment purpose? To me, I think roads are more important for our infrastructure and development economically. I personally got a lot of feedback on this issue. A lot of constituents didn't like the idea that, maybe unlikely, but could happen, that they could be told as well. In addition to that, I represent Quonset. And Quonset has many trucks coming through that represent 2 big constituents. Also, one is a car shipping company, NORAD, and another, of course, is Job Lot. So they do a lot of trucking. So the people I represent certainly were very interested in not seeing gantries put up in place for tolling of trucks.
Well, we'll see moving forward. Again, there's these first 2 ones, but again, drawn out, a little delayed. We'll see a little bit more in 2018. I'm sure we'll see more of you in 2018.
I hope so, sure.
But wanted you to come right here in the studio again to talk with folks about this letter that you penned. Got a lot of feedback on it as we're looking to see moving forward what happens with the Pawtucket Red Sox. I'm sure you'll be in touch.
I will.
Don't be a stranger.
Always, Kate.
And we'll have you back here in the studio.
Right, thanks,
okay,
Kate.
Senator
Thank you so much
Sheehan,
for
I
having
appreciate
me.
you taking the time.
Appreciate
be safe on the roads.
Thank you very much.
I'll let you go around the corner.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Senator James Sheehan penned a piece this week about why he opposes the Paw Sox deal in its current form. Talked a little bit about where things currently stand with Senate Finance, again, looking to get more information from the Paw Sox owners about their own personal financials. Speaker of the House, Nicholas Mattiello, was in on Monday talking with Josh Fenton here about his reticence to move this year looking into 2018. We know the Senate is interested in this as we stand here in November, so we'll see what happens. Senator Sheehan, again, opposed to it in its current form, said he'd support it if it was put on the ballot and to the voters, so we'll see what happens with that moving forward. But again, he penned the piece for us, wanted to have him in here to talk with you, the